All right. So yes, if I haven't met you before, my name is Robin Devine, and I am the owner of the Lymph Balance Center here in Calgary. And I have been a massage therapist here in the city of Calgary in the province of Alberta of Canada for the last 21 years. And I've been a lymphatic therapist for the last 16. So I used to work from home. I did mobile massage. I did a whole bunch of different, I worked in chiro's offices. I did mobile. I worked from home. I did all these beautiful things. And there was such a high need for lymphatics that I started to get overwhelmed just working for myself. And so about 3 years ago, I opened up a clinic here in the city, and I've also become an instructor for the Chickley Health Institute, which is based out of the United States. And I teach lymph drainage therapy around the world. And so one of the big things when we teach about the lymphatics is we do a lot of education about your immune system. So in the last year, with all the wonderful things that happened in 2020 and moving into 2021, there's always been a lot of concern about understanding how our immune system works. So I put together this presentation to sort of help. It, goes a little bit into biology 30 or grade 12 biology, but it is one of those things that it's a foundation. It's a very basics of how your immune system works. So if you have a good understanding about the immune system, this is going to be sort of a fun interpretation of how your immune system works. I am a very colorful explainer, and I like visualizations and I like analogies. Some people thrive on it and live on it and understand it and really learn a lot from that. And other people go, I don't need that. And that's okay. If it doesn't make any sense to you, you want to throw it out, please do. But this is how I explain it to all of my clients. This is how I teach my children about your immune system. And this is how we're going to go through it this evening. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the comments section. I love answering questions. For the sake of the presentation, I'm going to hold all the questions till the very end so I can do my best at answering them. But as we're going through, please do feel free to put questions into the chat and I will do my best at the end. So what we're going to talk about is how your immune history and what is your immune history and how it shapes you. So what cells in your body actually provide you with defense against foreign invaders? And we have lots of different kinds of cells in our body, but the ones that do the job of actually defending you against the bad guys coming in, those are your white blood cells. So white blood cells are normally just clustered together as just called immune cells. And when you're in basic biology anatomy classes, we are basically taught, hey, you have white blood cells, you have red blood cells, and you have platelets, and congratulations. And so white blood cells is really what we have to look at to understand how our immune system works. So Amanda just made it. Hi, Amanda. All right. So where do your white blood cells come from? When you are a child and you are an infant, you have in your bones, you have, instead of red bone marrow, instead of yellow bone marrow, you have red bone marrow. And red bone marrow is what creates blood cells. It's called hematopoietic. And what that means is that that tissue actually creates not only red blood cells, but all of your blood cells. As you get older, that red bone marrow actually gets replaced with yellow bone marrow, which is really just a fatty substance that fills the long cavities in your long bones. So if we look at your femur or your humerus and your arm, your radius, your ulna, and your forearm, those are the bones that really have good marrow cavities. If you are a meat eater, a carnivore, and you've had marrow, you know that, it gets served on a plate, nice big bone. There's this nice hollow round cavity in the middle. And generally what you're eating is going to be yellow bone marrow. But you can get times where it is the red bone marrow. Depends on the age of the animal you're ingesting. Good times. So in your red bone marrow, you have these cells, and they're your stem cells. And these are amazing stem cells because their job is to create and become any kind of blood cell. They might become red blood cells, they might become white blood cells, or they might become platelets. So red blood cells, those are the ones that make up the majority of your blood, and that's going to carry a lot of oxygen, a lot of iron component in your red blood cells. Your white blood cells, again, are all about immunology. Okay, so we're going to go into depth in those guys. And platelets are the ones that are dealing with clotting. So they're all very important, and having them in the right concentrations is really important. So we're going to look at the white blood cells because they're more exciting right now. So from that one stem cell that we have at the very top there that came out of your bone marrow, you make up all of these cells on the left side of your screen. So you get red blood cells, and then from that progenitor cell, basically, you also get all of these other cells. It's amazing. So you get platelets and you get these white blood cells, but you also create this other type of cell, which then becomes our B and T lymphocytes, which are really important as we get along here. So we care about all of these guys. And this is why immunology, because for sometimes it's a little bit boring, but we're going to go into each single one and you're going to learn about the little universe that is in each side of these cells here. So white blood cells are made up of these guys. We have monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils, and lymphocytes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of them differently. So the first group we're going to look at are called granulocytes, and we call them granulocytes. Granulo means granules, and cytes means cells. So there are three very specific guys that have granules in them, and that's eosinophils, basophils, and neutrophils. And the way that we actually discovered that they're different kinds of cells is we took these cells and we put them under a microscope on a little, glass smear, and they add stains. And so one of them, you could see the granules when they used a basic solution. So they named that a basophil. And then this one over here, they put it on the slide and they used a neutral solution. And all the granules popped up. So we called it a neutrophil. And then this guy here, they put him onto the slide and they used an acidic solution. And instead of making my life easy and calling it an acidophil, they called it an eosinophil. So it's the one little catch to my whole story. But these are the phils, and they all have granules in them. So basophils, these granules that are inside this white blood cell, are granules of histamine. And every time we talk about histamine, we're talking about allergies generally. So basophils, when you have lots of basophils in your bloodstream, it's because you're having an allergic reaction. What they do is they go to all your blood vessels and they say, hey guys, there's these horrible allergens that have made it into our body. How can we dilute them? And your body goes, oh, well, we can just leak out a whole bunch of fluid, a whole bunch of plasma and stuff like that from the bloodstream, extra water, and we're going to dilute it, just like diluting a drink. We're going to add a lot of water, and that's going to also cause a whole bunch of defense cells to come to our rescue. So basophils, those little granules, get released when you're having an allergic reaction. So one of the amazing things about understanding what each of these cells do is that if you go and have your blood taken, and you're having, let's say, you're really feeling like crap, everything, you go to the doctor, they take your blood and they say, hey, there's a high white blood cell count. What the doctor's not actually going to tell you is that they're able to see which white blood cells are in high quantity. So they could say, hey, you have a high white blood cell count. We think you're having an allergic reaction. Well, they actually are able to see that you have a high basophil white blood cell count. So they're able to look at which cells are in high quantities, telling the doctor, hey, this is what's going on inside the body. So basophils are great. They're your histamine releasers. So when you take medication like antihistamines, you're basically telling the basophils to shut up and relax. It's just animal dander. Don't worry. That's those pollens, they're not going to kill you. Like, stop being overreactive. Neutrophils, of all your white blood cells, 40 to 60% of all your white blood cells are neutrophils. And neutrophils deal with bacterial infections. So getting like streptococcus or staphylococcus bacteria in your body's going to respond with a neutrophil. And neutrophils are like the ones that show up at the very beginning of an infection. So I always think of them like the young bucks that are so excited about going off to war. If you look back at like Gone with the Wind, an amazing movie, um, one of my favorites. But all those like 18-year-olds were like so excited that they were going off to war. Those are neutrophils. Neutrophils are there at the beginning. They're super excited. And so if you have a high neutrophil count, that's not only telling us that it's probably a bacterial infection, but you're also probably in the early stages. So we're looking at more of an acute infection. It's just kind of started. We also have eosinophils, and they are also good for allergic reactions, but you also see them with parasitic infections. There's not a lot of them. Out of all your white blood cells, only about 7% are actually eosinophils, and they cause that inflammatory response. And if you have a high level of eosinophils, they're probably going to say, you know, let's check for parasites, etc. Normally, if it's allergic, it'll be a combination of basophils and eosinophils. So, and then we have the monocyte. Monocytes, mono means one and cyte means cell. This is one big cell. And monocytes, they are the ones that are going to eat up the foreign pathogens, and they create an inflammatory response as well. Monocytes are more common in a chronic infection. So somebody who has maybe tuberculosis, somebody who has chronic bronchitis, so like an infection that's been going on for a long time. So it's kind of like the big brother of neutrophils. So the neutrophils are kind of like those like eager bucks that are wanting to go out to war. And then after about a year, unfortunately, they've died off, or they're not as excited anymore because, you know, fighting off this infection has taken a while. So then you start seeing monocytes showing up, and they're this big cell that's there for the long haul, that's trying to protect you. So one of the things that happens with our immune cells is they do something called cell eating, which is called phagocytosis. Literally, it means cell eating. And I used to think that it was like a Pac-Man coming in and physically eating, but this is more like the blob. So I have young kids. I get to see, unfortunately, a lot of kids' movies. There's Monsters versus Aliens, where they have this big blob sort of character. His name is Bob. And instead of like eating, he just basically sort of walks through them and engulfs them into his body. Phagocytosis is like that. It's like there's like these foreign bacteria that looks like Cheetos. And basically the cell itself sort of engulfs around it, envelops it, starts to break it down, and then discards all of its waste at the other end. So that's phagocytosis. And that's how cells really bring foreign pathogens into them to start digesting or break them down. So it's a good thing. Our cells can also do cell drinking, and that's called pinocytosis, like drinking a nice Pinot Noir. So that's cellular drinking, when you're bringing in water or some type of fluid into a cell. So lymphocytes. Lymphocytes literally are the cells of your lymphatic system, okay? And their job is to attack and deal with foreign pathogens that are in your system, and it's going to help fight off invaders as they're coming in. So we have two different kinds of lymphocytes. We have B lymphocytes and we have T lymphocytes, and I'm going to tell you the difference here. So lymphocytes, we have B lymphocytes, and they're going to attack invaders that are sort of floating around outside of the cell. Whereas T lymphocytes attack cells that have been infected. Okay, so when we have infected cells, what we're looking at is cells that have already been encountered with a virus pathogen, and now that cell needs to be kind of destroyed, because no longer is it a cell of your own, it's now a compromised cell. And we don't like to have compromised cells multiplying and moving their way throughout their body, because really it's not going to be good. So the biggest question is, how do we know which cells are yours and which ones are foreign? Like, how can your body possibly figure it out, right? There's all these different cells that have come in, and they're all there, and they want to know what's going on and who's there. And so what we want to do is we want to know who's there. And the way that we're able to do that is we are going to have name tags. Like, we know who these people are. You and I do, unless you're like living in a hole. And that's okay. But you recognize they're all wearing name tags. And it's because not everybody recognizes foreign from self. And so on every single cell, you have an identifying marker. And those are your name tags. And in the anatomy world, we call those antigens. And so every cell you have has a name tag. And it says if you're a Robin cell, or if you are a Tony cell, or an Amanda cell, or a Lisa cell, all of those cells have their own markers. And that's what we identify as being either our own or something that comes from somewhere else. So for example, that's me. And I have this nice name tag that says Robin, okay? And my body knows that my cells are mine. But this lady's looks really nice. She's got brown hair. She's got a black shirt, just like me. Her hair's longer, but on her name tag, it says something different. It's not Robin. So my body would go, no, you're not Robin cell. This lady, really nice blonde hair, looks very put together, but again, not Robin. This lady, well, I think we look pretty different, but my body's not going to look at anything other than that name tag, that antigen that's on that cell. And same thing with Zoe. She looks sweet, very smart, glasses, beautiful necklace, but again, not Robin. So my immune system's going to go, sorry guys, you are not Robin cells, therefore we are going to attack you. And that is the very foundational concept of how your immune system works. You want to recognize your own cells as yours and say, I love you and I don't want to hurt you. And any foreign cells, we want to defend. We want to attack and we want to defend our temple, our body, okay? So of your lymphocytes, we have B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, and natural killer cells. And they all do their own little way of defending our body. So if you think of every time you encounter a virus, a bacteria, a parasite, everything as little battles that are going on in your body, it's the easiest to understand because any foreign invader is literally trying to invade your body and you need to defend yourself. So we need to make sure that our army or our Navy or the fire department or the police department are well educated. Okay, so all of these cells started in your bone marrow. Okay, so I'm going to use my city as an example. So I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and all these cells were born here. So we're going to say Calgary is kind of like the bone marrow. Okay, so I have two different kinds. I have B lymphocytes and T. B lymphocytes mean that they mature, develop, and are trained in the bone marrow. So it's like saying, I grew up in Calgary, I was born in Calgary, I was raised in Calgary, and I went to the University of Calgary. I went to a local school. I became a firefighter, I became whatever. I have learned to protect my body, my country, if you will, by going to school locally. I stayed in the bone marrow and I was trained to fight and defend, okay? T lymphocytes were born in Calgary, were raised in Calgary, but when they went to secondary school, they did not. They went to Toronto. They left town. They went to another school. They wanted the bigger school, the better school. So they moved all the way to the thymus. And the thymus is this beautiful organ, this beautiful gland that sits right behind your sternum. So if you follow your collarbone all the way across, at the very middle where they meet, there's a nice solid sort of almost, it feels like a circle, but that is your manubrium or the top of your sternum. And right behind there, that's where your thymus is. And your thymus is where your T lymphocytes went to university. That's where they learned to do what they're going to do. So the thymus itself is an amazing gland. It is very big in children. And then as we age, it slowly dies off and it becomes kind of just like fat tissue that sits behind your thymus or behind your manubrium, sorry. And so as it's developing, as we're children and as we go into teenagehood and so on, it's helping stimulate the production of really strong T lymphocytes, among other things. And as we hit the age of, normally we're saying around 24, 25, 26, it actually becomes very non-functional. And we end up seeing that a lot of those cells, they are not as strong. So this is another reason why we like to have our children encounter, infections, bacteria, that kind of stuff when kids, because that's where you start learning how to fight against all those foreign pathogens, is when you're a child. And look at the size of the thymus and how it's going to stimulate those lymphocytes to really be strong and fight for you. It's really good. So this is just a little bit showing that, you have your bone marrow in a young person, you're going to the large thymus, and they're just showing you that you have a lot of baby cells, a lot of these naive cells. Whereas as you're an adult, you don't. You have a lot of memory cells, and hopefully you created good memories by fighting off infections. But, you need to really develop a good immune system when you're a child. And this just shows you, again, it's just showing you that there's your bone marrow stem cell, and as it grows and develops and where it travels. So we're going to go into this more. So your B lymphocytes, these are beautiful lymphocytes that are born in the bone marrow, and they're developed in the bone marrow. And they are used to identify and neutralize foreign cells. B lymphocytes are all about antibodies. So you've probably heard a little bit about antibodies. Antibodies have a lot to do with how it attacks foreign cells before they get into our tissues. So we have different kinds of antibodies. Some are transmitted via breast milk, saliva, and tears. So obviously things getting into our eyes, things getting into our mouth. When we're a baby, we have antibodies that are given to us as infants when we're nursing. Sometimes we have them, in different areas of our body. We can also have them crossing the placenta, a whole bunch of different areas we have antibodies. But if we want to go simplistic, just for fun, let's say that my B lymphocytes are kind of like the police department or the army. I want you to think of your defense system as being a group of cells that carry guns, because antibodies are kind of like bullets. And these bullets are going to do the job of defending you against different kinds of foreign invaders. Okay. So for example, I've been married now for almost 20 years, and I love my husband, and he has taught me many, many things. But the things I never thought I was going to learn was going to be about Marvel comic book characters and superheroes and werewolves and all these really paranormal things that unfortunately I have way too much information on now in my life. So this is my best analogy for you, is every different kind of invader will die and be neutralized based on the type of bullet that is created. Okay, so for every antigen, which is my name, my marker on my cell, every different kind of foreign pathogen, whether it be a virus or bacteria, has a different name tag. And each name tag identifies, so whether it's a virus, etc. And your body has to go through a trial and error of figuring out exactly which antibody, or in this analogy, what kind of bullet is going to kill that very specific bad guy. Okay, so from my extensive knowledge of really interesting movies and genres, thank you to my husband, I know that all these different bullets are going to do different things. Okay, some of them are gold tipped, some of them are exploding, some of them do all these different things. But I know that if the foreign invader is a werewolf, from my knowledge and from having my husband re-explain it to me, silver bullets are going to be key. Okay, if it's, just a bat or some other kind of invader, it's not going to work. But to kill that werewolf, that foreign invader, I need a silver bullet. And the downside is that I didn't know that the first time it came in. I had to do trial and error. So the first bullet I used was an exploding bullet, and that werewolf was like, that was so lame. And it just kept fighting. And it started taking over different parts of my body. And then I used, a bullet that was, let's say, just filled with, I don't know, garlic. It didn't work. Okay, so I tried a whole bunch of different bullets. It didn't work. And so that might have taken me 3, 4, 5 days until I finally got the right combination of what needed to be in that bullet to kill that virus, that werewolf. Once I figured it out, I was like shouting it from the rooftops. I'm like, guys, make tons of silver bullets, please, because we're going to kill this werewolf, this invader. And so we do that with every single virus, bacteria, et cetera, that comes into our body. So while I'm trying to figure out which bullet works, that werewolf is running rampant and I'm getting the symptoms of it. You know, I might be getting a fever. I might be getting, pustules on my body. I might be getting a headache. And once my body figures it out, then I'm able to kill it and go on with my life. So I know that, so that's a werewolf. It needs silver bullets. If you have children, you will understand that there are were-rabbits, and were-rabbits need 24 karat gold bullets. And so, I might have been like, it looks like a werewolf, but kind of not. So I might have tried the silver bullet for a while and it didn't work. Then I know that if a vampire comes in, now this vampire I might not want to kill right away, but if you're Team Jacob, kill away. So this vampire, I might need a bullet that's got holy water in it with garlic. And maybe it's a different kind of vampire because, as my husband will say, that movie was bullcrap and that's not how you actually kill vampires. But anyways, I digress. So you're going to figure out what kind of bullets you need. Now, some things it's all about location. So, if you have a zombie that comes into your body, it's a different kind of pathogen. You might just need any bullet, just making sure you're taking it straight to the head. So every time you encounter somebody that's got antigens or markers on them, like a name tag, and it identifies as something other than you, your body has to figure out how to kill it. So B lymphocytes use bullets. They use antibodies to attack, okay? And the great thing is that by fighting off that pathogen, that foreign invader by yourself, you did an amazing thing. You created memory. You had an experience. It took you a while to figure it out. You got sick, unfortunately, in the process, but you created a memory which will last and carry through. So if you meet the same vampire next week, you know how to kill it. And you'll probably kill it faster than it has any effects on your immune system. It's going to be amazing. So the great part about it is that you're able to document and create a memory that'll help you down the future. So one of the ways your body does that is by creating memory cells. And I think of memory cells as how can you document an experience? One of the ways we can do it is by creating a Facebook page. So the memory B cells has this beautiful Facebook page and it's documenting all the things. Whoops, go back one here. It documents all the things that you did to kill off that vampire. Like, you take a picture of the foreign pathogen, you put it in the status, you put a tag underneath it going like, ugly vampire. You put the exact formula of what you put in the bullets. And then in the future, if you come up against that were-rabbit, you can go, hold on, I've seen this dude before. He came in, remember we had all those problems? Okay, so let's go into our Facebook page, let's scroll, and let's find this. Oh, we fought him before, I know about this. Remember we got sick, but we figured it out. So what was the exact, oh, here he is. And it pulls up that photo of that cell, and it says, look, it had that name tag that said were-rabbit. Okay, what was the ingredients we used? Oh yeah, remember 24 karat gold bullets. Okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna make tons of those. So it goes to the bullet making factory, which is this cell called a plasmocyte. Plasmocytes are these amazing antibody factories, literally the bullet creating centers. And its job is to make tons of bullets to kill off this foreign invader, okay? So here we've got bacteria, we have a virus, and they come into our body and this big cell ate it up. The macrophage, he did phagocytosis, he ate it up. And what it did is it came over to the B cell and it sort of went bleh, and it threw up the cell and it says, look, I found a name tag. It's like the cat when they eat a bird or something outside, or a mouse, they bring it in and they put it on the ground, like they're trying to show you how impressive they were, that they just killed this thing, and aren't you impressed by them? And what your immune system goes is, oh my gosh, look at that name tag. I totally know who that is. We need to kill that. And it goes through the memory cell and it finds the exact recipe that we need for that bullet, that antibody to fight against it. And this is what gives you immunological strength, is the fact that you've created this memory. Just think if we hid all those years as children and we never left the house and we sanitized our hands all the time and we were never allowed to play in the dirt and we were never allowed to get dirty. And imagine how weak your immune system would be. Imagine how blank and boring that Facebook page would be, right? We want to have those experiences. I let my children eat as many worms as they want to. If they want to go play in the dirt and then shove that finger up their nostril and dig around, it sounds gross, but it totally helps. They're creating immunological memories, which is going to help carry us into our adulthood. Okay, some of the memories last forever. Some of the memories last a season or two, right? And every time a different antigen comes in, we have to say, I've either seen it before, it looks familiar, or I have no idea who that is. We need to figure this out. Okay. So we love B cells. B cells, like I said, here's the virus. We're going through it, activates the B cell. There's the memory cell getting involved in everything, going, oh yeah, we've seen that. Goes to the plasma cell or the plasmocyte. And all of a sudden we're going into mass production of those bullets or those antibodies. And we can start fighting off to protect the body. T lymphocytes are hand-to-hand combat. These cells are all about fighting off pathogens that have already kind of infected our cells already. So T lymphocytes are like the Avengers. And I love the Avengers. We even named one of our sons after a Marvel comic book character because my husband loves Marvel so much. I'll let you see if you can figure it out. But anyways, so T lymphocytes, this is the Avengers, and I'm going to show you why. They don't need bullets. They do hand-to-hand combat. They're that good. So there's a type of cell called a CD8. Technically, it just means cytotoxic T-cell. Okay. Cytotoxic T-cells are one of the coolest cells, in my personal opinion, because they find a cell that's been infected and they go over and they punch a hole into the cell. And not only is that good enough, but it's going to pump it full of toxins. And those toxins are going to enter in through the hole, go into the infected cell, and basically kill it from the inside. So it's, it's going and creating a pore or a hole and just creating like toxic warfare from the inside of that infected cell. It's an amazing cell. So there's all these different things, but we also know that there's times where our body needs to be alerted that there's this infection going on. So we have a cell and it's called a helper T cell. The helper T cell is the one that tells your body that you're going to need to have an immune response, right? We've been creating these really beautiful bullets and they're doing great, but now we have cells that have become infected and those bullets aren't going to do the same job. So we need to get the Avengers together, because if you don't alert the Avengers, and this is going to show me who has actually watched the movies, but if those Avengers aren't told, they're just sitting there eating shawarma and they're totally not alerted or caring that anything's going on. So they're just sitting there with their legs up, having some good dinner. But we have this helper T cell, which is sort of the cell that alerts all of the T cells to get their butts together and assemble. So that would be like Nick Fury. So Nick Fury is like, all right, Avengers, assemble. We need to go attack. There's this infection happening in the big toe. get your butts down there. Let's go. There's some problems. Or I need you to go to the lungs. The lungs are kind of having some issues with some bronchial virus. Can you get your butts there, please? Okay. So once they get sort of stimulated and ready to go, we also have, these are the natural killers. Natural killer cells will just basically attack anything that's foreign and try to kill it. And different cells need different things. So different kinds of foreign cells might need to be smashed. And I have the perfect Avenger for that. I have the Hulk, and Hulk smashes. Sometimes they need to have some sort of crazy kind of like body takedown and so on. So then we might need Black Widow. So we have different cells that do different attacks to kill different types of cells that have been infected. Maybe neither of those work and we need to have some real strength and we need to be able to attack it. Maybe then we bring in Iron Man, or maybe we need some sort of amazing kind of shield to defend ourselves, and then we need Captain America. Either way, we're going to use a combination of these cells. And when we attack and we win, we take documentation of what we just did, because we just achieved an amazing win in this horrible battle that was happening in our body, and we won. So just like we documented everything with the bullets, let's document what we did, because A, we're super amazing, and B, what if that huge giant like space worm comes through the hole in the sky over top of New York City? I need to know which Avenger to call. Like if Black Widow's sitting down there, like, you know, with a broken arm, I know she wasn't super functional, but Hulk did some pretty amazing things. So we need to document who is the most useful and how we attack that. So we can't use Facebook, but we could use Instagram. So there's Tony Stark, obviously, documenting for the whole team. And there's Instagram account and documenting the foreign invaders, taking a photo so we recognize it in the future, noticing the antigens again, and then exactly what type of cell did we need to have involved. Okay. So those are our two big ways that we use our lymphocytes to help us attack, whether it's just a foreign invader that's walking around, or if it's actually invaded and gotten into cells. So we have our two sort of options. So this is where we look at, how do you encounter your foreign pathogens? How do you build your immune system? Okay. So we have 4 different ways. We have a natural active way of developing immunity, and we have a naturally passive. Additionally, we have artificial active and passive. So here, I'm going to explain it for you. It's pretty easy actually, but naturally passive is when you were naturally given your antibodies. You were given the bullets and told that they were going to kill certain invaders. So your mom, when you were in utero, that's a natural process. Your mom gave you antibodies and passed them to you through the placenta. You also, if you nursed, you received antibodies via breast milk, so by nursing. So those antibodies were passed directly from the mom to the baby. Totally natural, but passive in the sense of you didn't actually meet that foreign pathogen. You didn't meet the bad guy. What you did was you were given the bullets. So in comparison, naturally active is when the pathogen enters the body naturally. So you walked into a store behind a kid who just rubbed his hands all over his nose and then grabbed the doorknob. A, gross. B, totally natural. Somebody's in the same room, sneezes, it happens to go into your area, etc. Okay, so the pathogen enters the body completely natural, and your immune system learns to fight off that pathogen, which means you probably got sick in the interim. The great thing though is that you created antibodies, and by having the fight, by fighting that war, that battle in your body, you created memory cells. You only get memory if you actively fought for it. Okay, it's the strongest form of immunological memory. Now, that's really important. That's what's going to carry you. Artificially active is when an active or an inactive form of a pathogen is given to you. Okay, so this would be looking at something like your immune system would then make the appropriate antibodies, and the best example of that is vaccinations. Okay, I'm not going to go into a huge conversation about vaccinations. It's a huge, huge, huge topic and not something that we're going to do tonight. But basically what you're looking at in a vaccination, you are given either a dead or a partially weakened virus. And your body then looks at it and says, okay, so looking at the name tag on this dead virus, or look at this weak virus that's been drugged and it's just down on the floor, how would I kill this? And your body goes through an immunological function of figuring out what antibodies to create. By creating those antibodies to then fight it off, you create memory cells. Again, super impressive, really good. You create the memory. Now, if somebody has a weakened immune system, when they then meet this weakened form of a virus, if their body is already weakened, they can still get sick from that virus because their immune system wasn't strong enough to handle it. Again, one of the reasons why sometimes we get vaccinated and we still end up having to fight that virus. The last one is artificially passive. And what this means is that you did not get exposed to the antigen, okay? We just gave you the antibodies via an injection. So this is the immunization. So this is a little bit different. This is, I got bit by a snake and I have a strong immune system, but do I trust my immune system to figure out exactly how to attack the venom so I don't die? And do I think it can do it fast enough? Probably not. So it's good to just give me an injection of the antivenom and say, look, I'm good to go without having this memory cell created because I didn't die. And that's kind of important. So when you're just given antibodies, and most of the time it's done in a case where it's a life-saving kind of event. Okay, so those are that's really important. So those are the big ways that we encounter pathogens and how our body can sort of decide whether or not or how it's creating the defense or if there's memory cells created. They're all valid ways of creating immunological memory when it comes to the active forms because we fought for it. So the hard part is that when you meet a virus or a bacteria or something for the first time, the name tag might say, the best example I'm going to give for you is the flu virus. So the name tag says flu, but the flu virus kind of got smart and said, oh, I see how you're doing this. You've seen me before, so you know how to kill me. Therefore, this whole process is not going to do me very well in my global desire to take over and destroy your body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of change up my name tag because this is how you're identifying me. So how can we change up our name tag? Well, one of the things that can happen is it could hang out with another virus similar, like a different kind of flu virus, and go, let's hang out and let's have a baby kind of idea. And they mix. And so now the actual antigen on the surface looks different. So if you look around virus A here, you'll see these are its antigens. Those are the markers on it that are identifying for our body to fight it off. And this is a different kind of flu virus. And see how they have different markers? But when they blend together, oh my gosh. So your body would recognize virus A and virus B different, and we could fight off virus A and fight off virus B, but they've created a new virus, a new thing for me to fight off. So it would have been fine if virus A had stayed to itself and virus B had stayed to itself, because then if I met them again, I'd have memory and I could fight them, but I don't now because they've created new name tags and I don't recognize them. And so that's called an antigenic shift. The other thing that happens is antigens can kind of drift and you can have these mutations that happen over time. So now instead of my name tag saying flu, it says flu, but they've decorated the name tag and they colored it in with pencil crayons, and then they put some purple flowers around it. And now, even though it's the exact same virus, it's kind of shifted and it's changed its antigen. So my body has to go through the process of fighting it off again. And in that process, I'm probably going to get sick. And by the time I figure it out, maybe 3 or 4 days later, and then I fight it off and I feel better. So going through that process over and over again. And there's several different variations. And I know there's tons of talk about variations these days in regards to different viruses. But we do see it with the flu virus. It's part of the game. It's how a virus's job, its job in life is to multiply, take over, and multiply. That's all it wants to do. And our immune system's job is to stop that. So you have to think you have 2 systems that are trying to win, and just like 2 different countries in a battle, they're going to come up with something smarter the next time. So a virus is going to change the way that you identify it, and then you have to find a way to fight it. Then it's going to change the way it wants to be identified, and you have to change the way you fight it. It's the constant immunological battle. Different types of tissues around your body can be affected. And this is also what we call autoimmune, is where your body doesn't recognize your own cells as being yours. So instead of your body going, hey, that's just normal nervous spinal tissue, your body says that's a foreign invader. And your body's immunological system will actually go and attack your own nerve cells. If we attack the nerve cells, we're looking at, could be multiple sclerosis. We could be looking at Parkinson's. If we're attacking our cartilage, we're looking at rheumatoid arthritis. If we're attacking your GI tract, you're looking at Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and celiac disease. There's so many types where your immune system just can't get it straight what's ours and what's foreign. We also have situations where our body just doesn't stop attacking. So there's different types of cells that get impacted by different diseases. One of the cells that we have that actually tells your body to stop having an infection. So once you've fought everything off, your body actually has a type of T cell, which is called a suppressor T cell. It tells your immune system to take a chill pill. Like, the war's over, you've won, we've documented it. Go sit down, go have shawarma again, like go have some tea and some tiramisu. Like, seriously, the battle's done. And if you don't have that cell, your body just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and doesn't stop. A suppressor T cell, if you don't have it, you just have hyper reactions. Your body will just keep fighting. Okay. Remember we talked about that helper T cell? It's the Nick Fury of the whole Avengers, the one who tells them to get off their butts and go fight off a foreign invader. Well, there's actually a condition where that helper T cell is kind of like gagged and bound and put into a closet and locked and forgotten about. And that is AIDS. If you look at how AIDS affects your immune system, it actually kills the helper T cells. Your helper T cells levels go way down. And then somebody with AIDS generally doesn't die of AIDS, they die of an opportunistic infection because of flu or something came in and your body went, no, everything's fine. All your immune cells are sitting in the back, chillaxing, having like Long Island iced teas. They're not even caring because nobody's alerting them that there's a problem. So all of these cells can be affected by different things and by different situations. Leukocytosis is just basically your body producing tons and tons and tons of white blood cells. And there's good reasons for it and there's bad reasons for it. A lot of times we want leukocytosis. I want a lot of white blood cells when I'm having a bacterial infection. But I want to make sure that they're white blood cells that can fight. If they can't fight and they're really immature, remember, we want our cells to go off to university. They want to either stay at the University of Calgary or travel. They're B lymphocytes or T lymphocytes. If you have tons of white blood cells and they're traveling through your body and they're immature, they're like toddlers with guns, It's like trying to put a fire out with a toddler and a garden hose. That's leukemia. Leukemia is tons of white blood cells. You think it is a great thing, but they're white blood cells that are like playing in the backyard. They're not doing anything functional. There's just crap loads of them. So there's so many different conditions. There's leukopenia, which is we have low white blood cell count. There's tons of different conditions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And really, the big thing is like, you know, what are some ways that we can boost our immune system? So obviously, you know, eating healthy is really big. Every time you imagine, you know, you're really stressed out, you've gone to work, you know, it's near Christmas time, somebody brought in a big box of chocolates. You know, I don't know why, but so many clients at the clinic, massage therapy clinic too, think that, you know, a big box of chocolates is what we want to eat. It's nice. But I know I'm more likely to get a cold or get sick in the next couple of days because my sugar levels are really high, right? Toxins like cigarettes, smog, you know, all those kind of medications that are, you know, going to bring down your immune system. You know, making sure we're doing nice, big, deep diaphragmatic breathing really pumps your lymphatic system, and your lymphatic system moves your immune cells. It's all intertwined. Keeping our muscles moving, making sure we're well hydrated. You know, we want to make sure we can move those cells around. So some of the really easy, quick things that you can do to help your immune system. One of them is really cool. It's called rebounding. A lot of people don't know about it. It was really popular in the 70s and 80s and sort of, you know, but when you do gentle rebounding, you're helping move and circulate blood and lymph. And think about it, if you got a cut or an infection in your foot, you want to have fresh blood coming down and you want to take away waste products. This is one of the best ways to do it. It really keeps your immune system strong. There's fun little things you can do, like something called dry brushing. And, you know, there's tons of videos online on YouTube showing you how to use dry brushing to stimulate and simulate the way that your lymphatic system moves. So again, helping get those circulatory components moving those cells, keeping your whole body healthy. Sometimes when fluid is stuck, we use something called lymphatic taping, which is where it's kind of like kinesiology taping, but we apply it differently to help facilitate movement of fluid. And stagnant fluid is not good. Stagnant fluid doesn't have a lot of immune cells in it. It's all waste. So we want to make sure that stagnant fluid, wherever it is in the body, keeps moving. And then one of the things that I do in my clinic is very specifically, we do lymph drainage therapy. And just by stimulating the lymphatic system to really move the fluid around, we're also stimulating our body to produce more of those lymphocytes. So just imagine going into Christmas time where we get super stressed, we're not eating very good, like it's hard to turn down fudge. I don't know about anybody else. I notoriously get sick at Christmas time. And so going into Christmas, I'm getting a lot of treatment myself to make sure I'm putting as many of my, you know, whether I'm looking at B lymphocytes or T lymphocytes, I want to have a strong defense going into a stressful time where I might be meeting more pathogens and where my body might be a little bit weaker against fighting against them. So lots of really, really great ways that we're able to help defend ourselves. So one of the things is, you know, we do lots of information, lots of talks. And so one of the great things is obviously whenever there's questions about is to send emails or to reach out. I love answering as many questions as I can, making sure that people understand what's going on. And there's lots of ways you can help take care of yourself without having to receive treatment. And sometimes you need a little bit of help. So talking to a nutritionist, talking to somebody who helps with stress reduction, whether it's psychologist, psychiatrist, looking at your hormones, your balancing systems with a naturopath or an acupuncturist, making sure your nervous system is working properly, like a chiropractor would help. You know, all of these components help with boosting your immune system, boosting your circulation, and overall to a healthier place. So if you do have questions, I love receiving emails and messages via Facebook or via Instagram or wherever, but definitely love having lots of questions. So